why do people end up being people pleasers? So again, multiple different ways that this can be produced in a child as their way of adapting in order to survive. But number one, you could have had parents who basically tried to control, dominate every aspect of your life. They didn't allow you to make decisions, they made them all for you. Or you had parents who punished you, threatened you, or got angry when you didn't do things their way. So they really reacted negatively and powerfully. Or your parents withdrew emotionally or cut off contact with you or withdrew love from you if you disagreed with them about how to do things. So they punished you in passive-aggressive ways. Or your parents did not allow you to make your own choices as a child. Or because your mom or dad wasn't around enough or wasn't capable enough, you ended up having to take care of your siblings, the rest of the family. Or your parents always talked to you about their personal problems so that you were always in the role of the listener. Or your parents made you feel guilty or selfish if you would not do what you wanted, so they accused you of being selfish. Your parents were like martyrs or saints. They selflessly took care of everyone else and denied their own needs. So that was what was role modeled to you. Your parents had this life trap as well. You did not feel that your rights, needs, or opinions were respected when you were a child. They were minimized, they were just rejected. The only way you could get your needs met or not be hurt or rejected was to be what others wanted you to be. So you had to learn to be a chameleon, to just switch into all kinds of different roles so you wouldn't get hurt or so that people would meet your needs. You had to be very careful about what you did or said as a child because you worried that if you said or did the wrong thing, your parents would get very depressed. It would mess them up. And they would get really down. Or you often felt angry at your parents for not giving you the freedom that other children had. Or your parents taught you a definition of love that was actually a definition of codependency. And it was basically that you should constantly deny your needs and sacrifice for others. That's actually a wrong definition of love, but that's what you got. Your parents had a belief system that if you took care of yourself in healthy ways, that you were being lazy or selfish. Peace in your family was not about justice and love happening. It was about submitting to what a narcissist wanted. And so as long as everybody fully submitted to what the narcissist wanted, there was peace, or what looked like peace. Everybody could relax. And so what got emphasized in your family as a strong value is submission. You need to submit to the authority. That's the only way to have peace. Possibly you grew up where your parents saw you as a unique child, a child who was a bit different, and they were afraid to let you kind of have autonomy, to do your own thing, to follow your dreams, to follow your desires, because they're afraid that you would go against social norms, that others would start looking down on your family because you were so different. And so they had to try to control you and keep you in a box. Or you grew up in a family where your parents saw children as being naturally selfish. And so it was emphasized to them that they had to train you to be obedient, to train you to be responsible. Because if they just let you go, then you would just be irresponsible and wild. And so their focus was not to understand their children or to meet their children's emotional needs. Their focus was get your children to obey, get your children to be responsible. It's possible you grew up in a family where your parents kind of gave you the role of being the hero child. You were going to be the perfect child. You were going to be the child that took care of everybody else, super responsible, sacrificed all your needs, and you got tons of validation for being that child. Or you grew up with a parent who was a narcissist. It was all about what they wanted. It was their way or the highway. They abused their position of authority. It was all about them getting what they wanted. There was no discussion, negotiation, or compromise. And so their needs, their desires, always were placed ahead of everybody else's, and you were expected to submit. So those are some of the things that could have happened in your childhood. Now let me take it then to complex trauma, because all of those ways of parenting or things you might have experienced would have made a child feel unsafe. They would have been little t trauma. And so the child would have adapted because of that. Let me put it in terms of complex trauma in 4 ways. What is happening in all of those things? So when there is danger, the brain's first 2 responses is the first 2 F's, fight or flight. Let's fight back. Let's get ourselves safe through running away or fighting. The problem for most children is they're too little to fight or flight. And so the brain goes, okay, those 2 F's don't work. Let's go to the 3rd F, freeze. And so they start shutting down. They start suppressing all their needs, all their emotions in order to survive. But then the brain says, but I'm so little, I still need others to meet my needs because I can't meet them myself. So they have to go to the 4th F. And that's fawning. And fawning is what I want you to see, the most extreme, last resort survival tactic that the brain comes up with. And basically what fawning is you be what others want. You people please. You never say no. You always be pleasant. You give up all your needs and take care of people. You be attuned to other people and what they want and their needs, not to yourself, because that's the only way to survive. So you look like a wonderful child. You look like the most agreeable, giving, caring child in the world, but you're fawning. You're desperately trying to survive. You're giving so that somebody hopefully won't hurt you, so that somebody hopefully will meet your needs. So fawning is last resort survival method that the brain comes up with when someone is small and their needs are not being met. Life is dangerous for them, but they desperately need somebody to care for them. Now, what comes out of all of the complex trauma is the child develop shame. They develop the belief that the reason they're being neglected and abused and abandoned is it's their fault. So they don't like themselves. They think, I'm the problem. I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. I'm inferior to everybody else. And so people pleasing comes out of this shame as well. Because how do I get people to like me? I need them to like me because I don't like myself. So the only way I'm going to get positive feelings towards myself is if other people have positive feelings towards me. So I have to get people to like me if I'm going to feel better about myself. So how do I do that? I please them. I give them what they want. I'm super kind to them. I give them gifts. All of those things become part of what I need to do to try to solve my shame. But more than that, shame is also I don't respect myself. And deep down, I believe nobody else will either if they see the real me. So the only way people will respect me, and therefore so that I can respect myself, is if I please them. If they really like me, if I do whatever they want, then they will respect me. That's again what they hope will be the solution to their shame. But another part of shame is I can't stand up for myself. I can't say no to anybody because if I do, they will get mad at me. They won't like me for saying no. They will reject me. They will see how terrible I am. Therefore, I can't have anybody reject me. I can't ever stand up for myself because that will expose my shame. So I must please people constantly to try to solve my shame. So shame is such a huge factor behind people pleasing. But there's another factor that comes out of complex trauma, and that is guilt. So many families with complex trauma and that create complex trauma have the cycle of abuse. And what comes out of that is after the violence takes place, or the blow up happens, the crisis happens, everybody's on their best behavior. Everybody's people pleasing. Why? Because they feel bad about what they just did. They're trying to make up for what they just did. And so now they're just saying yes to everybody, people pleasing to make up for their guilt. And what happens to a lot of parents who've done a lot of damage by being involved in addiction, in criminal activity, been in jail, and now they're back with their kids, they just say yes to their kids constantly because of guilt. They're afraid to say no because they're afraid their kids are going to get upset and feel that their parents are being mean again. A fourth thing that comes out of complex trauma is that you learn to submit. You learn to put your needs aside out of fear. Because if you stand up for yourself, you're going to get punished. You're going to get hurt. It's going to go bad for you. And so fear is a huge issue under this submission. So what I want you to realize is what's coming out of complex trauma is people pleasing isn't done out of love, though there might still be traces of that. It is done out of need to survive, fawning. It is done out of shame. It is done out of fear. It is done out of guilt. It is done out of negative emotions that are fueling this need to people please, to try to not get hurt, to try to get my needs met, to survive.